Today we're going to talk about nerve impulses, and the goal of this video is to describe how a nerve impulse is passed along a neuron. So first, a nerve impulse is an electrical signal that travels along the neuron, and it arises from the movement of ions, causing a change in electrical charges. At rest, a neuron's intracellular space, that's inside, is negatively charged, and the extracellular space, that's outside, is positively charged. And this is called the resting potential. Now, when a neuron is stimulated, either by the environment or another neuron, sodium rushes into the neuron and quickly reverses the charges. And this is called depolarization. This depolarization is known as the action potential. So you can see in this image, the sodium that's Na plus is moving into the cell. So this space up here is outside. It moves inside, and that's depolarization because the charges have flipped. The outside of the cell is now negatively charged, and the inside of the cell is now positively charged. And this process is going to quickly move down the length of the neuron. So as the impulse passes, potassium, that's K plus, diffuses out of the neuron. So you can see this K plus is moving out. And this is repolarization. The sodium-potassium pump, that's this red pump right here, restores the ion concentrations to normal, and that returns the resting potential. You can watch this video. I'll put a link in the description. It shows you the process with actual ions moving across the cell membrane, so it'll help for you to see that. Okay, now I'm going to walk you through this process, laying out step by step what's happening. So step one, the impulse arrives and the threshold is met. Step two, voltage-gated sodium ion channels are opened, and then sodium enters the cell. So this is a voltage-gated sodium channel right here. It opens up, and sodium can enter the cell. Third, voltage-gated potassium channels are opened. That's these channels right here. And potassium leaves the cell. So then sodium channels begin to rest. Fourth, voltage-gated potassium channels are still open, and sodium channels are now in the resting state. And then fifth, sodium and potassium pumps restore the original levels of voltage in the cell. If you were to track the voltage inside a cell, it would go up, then down, and return to its resting state. So kind of like flipping a light switch, a nerve impulse is an all or none response. Either the threshold is met and the impulse proceeds through the whole neuron, or it just never starts at all. Now, what events occur at a synapse? A synapse is where two neurons meet. So it's the end of one neuron and the beginning of another. So the two neurons do not touch. There's a space between them, and that space is called the synaptic cleft. As the impulse reaches the axon terminal, that's the end of one of the neurons, it can no longer cross the gap. So the impulse stimulates vesicles to release neurotransmitters, and those neurotransmitters move across the synaptic cleft. These neurotransmitters cause channels to open in the next neuron, continuing the action potential from one neuron to the next. So here's an overview. The action potential arrives at the presynaptic terminal. Calcium channels open on the presynaptic terminal. Synaptic vesicles release neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters bind to receptors on the postsynaptic neuron, and then sodium channels open on the postsynaptic neuron, and the process continues from there, like we discussed at the beginning of the video. Once the sodium channels open, the rest of the process continues. Okay, so to sum up, when a neuron depolarizes due to a received stimulus, the action potential moves down the length of the axon, and when the impulse reaches the axon terminals, it causes a release of neurotransmitters across the synaptic cleft to continue the impulse in the next neuron.